Hello, ghouls and truants, coming to you from Burbank, California. My name is Quinn Boys. I have missed almost a dozen days of school this semester, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, back-to-back-to-back, three-time reigning Film vs. Film podcast champion, Bustin' Makes Him Feel Good, Leonard Smith Jr. Leonard, what's up, man?
Ooh, that intro was a lot more enthusiastic, and I appreciated it.
You're
liked
welcome.
it. I loved
it's
it.
It's mandated.
I would never, Quinn, ever force you to take your father's coveted car out on the road, okay? You're a true friend. I would never do something like that to you.
Thank you.
Here we are.
My father's coveted car is a RAV4, by the way, just for everyone listening.
Here we are. We're talking about something we don't normally like to talk about because we don't do movies before 1984. But guess what? We're talking about the 80s today. And we got a great guest, a game show aficionado, amazing character actor, comedian, singer, Alyssa Sabo. What's up, Alyssa?
Wow,
Alyssa.
thank you for including singer in my bio. That's real. That made me feel really good. I've been trying to get on American Idol for years now.
You'll have the Thanos the Stones collection once you get on American Idol. You'll be like on all like reality shows.
Exactly. I just want to
Our bar for singer is lower than American Idol, but you still clear it.
Do you remember that? Like, did you guys watch American Idol early on?
Yes.
When there was
I was one of those classic singing competition. Oh no way! I was that, but I was a total. I watched the first 3 weeks while they're auditioning all the bad people. I would see the
Wang. What's his name?
Wang.
The Asian
William
dude.
Hung.
Where he
Hung.
was like, what was the song he sang?
She
bangs.
will turn you. Oh, was it not Lavillian?
She bangs.
She bangs.
Oh, baby, and she
when
moves.
she moves, she moves.
I think he did wind up covering that song too, Leonard, and I know that because every Christmas when we all go home, my brother will play William Hung, an album of holiday songs covers that he released, and he'll always sneak it onto my mom's like Christmas playlist. So it'll be like Eurythmics and Sting and all these like album bands doing classic covers, and then it'll be William Hung doing Silent Night.
I don't know if you guys know this little tidbit, this little fact. You guys remember, Kelly Clarkson won the first season of American Idol. We know who came in second, right?
Yes, Justin Guarini.
All right. Do you guys know that you guys see Justin Guarini all the time?
Where?
He's Little Sweet in the Dr. Pepper commercials.
Really?
Wait. The guy who like sings and who
the little
he's like
they had a
light
movie
skin with the
called From Justin to Kelly.
Yeah, and all the stardom went from Justin to Kelly, and he was never to be seen again. But now he's fucking Little Sweet in the Dr. Pepper commercials. If you watch college football, like you have seen, or if you watch football, like the Dr. Pepper commercials play all the goddamn time, and that is him in those little sweet, like singing with the Prince. He looks like Prince, basically. That's Justin Guarini.
Season 1 American Idol runner-up Justin Guarini is Lil Sweet, the Dr. Pepper mascot. He started doing that in 2015.
Yeah,
I was about to say that's not Flo the Progressive Lady. That is a popular recurring.
He's getting paid. That's Dr. Pepper money. Like they are paying.
And Kelly Clarkson's hosting a daytime TV show, so I want to reevaluate who came out best from.
Wow.
I mean, one's a lot less work. It's a lot less money, but it's still a lot of money. Like he's getting paid at least $1 million a year, at least.
You think?
Probably.
No.
He's been the Dr. Pepper guy for 7 years. Contractually, you get. The
I do want to go on American Idol.
Yeah, man. Like Flo makes like millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, but
like,
she
crazy.
didn't get her start on American Idol. She was at the ground.
She did not.
Oh, guys.
If you watch like old episodes of Mad Men, she's one of the ladies who's like working the switchboards or something. And it's funny now because I'll see it and I'll be like, Flo, the better things are coming for you. You're gonna get out of this switchboard room and you're gonna go places.
It
like,
is weird to think of like like being a commercial person and that being like your thing, but I don't know. Because I feel like sometimes people might say like, oh, well now people only see her as like the Flo, the progressive lady, but who cares?
Yeah, I'm seeing these checks. What the fuck are you talking about?
They've even like tried to. My favorite thing about Flo is her, because that's a campaign that's been like 10 years now. Is that about?
Yeah.
That seems right.
Yeah.
Right. She's been doing that for a long time. Where like they will introduce like the nerdy sidekick guy or something, and every time it's like Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible movies when they tried to add Jeremy Renner, and he's like, "Oh, I'm coming back hard," and Jeremy Renner's not in that. Like Flo is not clearing the floor. She's like, "I'm still Jordan. You can add as many cast members as you want around me, but Flo is not going anywhere. This is Flo's show."
There's
And
five.
America
There's
agrees.
5. They've added 5 new people to the team. They've been on it for like 2 or 3
Progressive
years
team.
now.
Wow.
Bro,
I
it's
want
just
to,
funny
I
how
want
I-
to
on
be
the
the
progressive
Geico
team.
lizard.
I want to
Hello.
I want to be anything. Okay,
Yeah.
I just remember it's funny. I grew up hating commercials because it was like, I'm not buying any of this. I don't care about this. Bring me back to my show. Now I hate commercials because like I'm not in them.
Exactly.
I'm just like, God damn it. I see every commercial break. I see at least 2 people I know in commercials, and I'm just like,
That should have been me.
I'm happy for you. Not. I mean, I sometimes, I don't fit the demographic, but God damn it, every time I see a chubbier black dude with a beard or with like long hair, I'm just like, God damn you. I always damn them to hell. Any chubby black dudes, that should have been fucking me. Somebody sent me a screenshot of this McDonald's commercial. This dude looks just like me in this McDonald's commercial, and it's not me. And they were like, "Yo, saw you in that McDonald's commercial." And it wasn't somebody like important in my life. It's somebody from like I knew 10 whatever years ago. And I didn't even correct them. I was just like, "Thanks."
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I don't even
I
like.
like that. You're like, yeah,
Free chicken nuggets
that
for
was
life.
me. I had so much fun on set with Ronald McDonald.
Ronald's just a normal guy.
Yeah.
You know what?
Well,
Behind
He's
the
like,
scenes,
yeah,
every
without
day.
his makeup.
It's funny that we're.
He
Funny
puts
we're
his
speaking
clown
of.
shoes on one at a time. Sorry.
Funny that we're speaking of Ronald McDonald because he was very big in the 80s.
Yes.
There you go.
McDonald's had the 80s on lock. We're talking about 80s movies today.
This is the best.
And,
this is the best decade, in my opinion. For
Yes, Alyssa.
actually,
Ever?
not for,
I would
not
have thought
for-
I would have thought you would have said 90s. I thought you were.
Yeah,
I
you
know.
host the podcast in
a
the
lot
90s.
of people think I love the 90s more than the 80s, but I would have to say the fashion.
A lot of people think that.
A lot of people. I am notoriously known for but
Here comes Alyssa, classic 90s over 80s.
But
girl.
I did. I do love the music of the 80s more than any other music. I
Okay.
would say.
It's funny how like 80s music gets shit on so hard.
This is a film podcast.
I know, but we
It
need to
is.
talk
I
about
know.
music
Okay.
for a second.
Sorry.
Alright.
No, I'm just.
What were you saying?
But 80s music is like my favorite music.
Yes.
Like across all genres, every single genre, 80s music I fucking love.
And everything you love
80s
now is because of the 80s.
That's true. The 2010s in
I don't
particular had
know.
a heavy like 80s recurrence.
It's just
I'm
like,
going to tell you
so
why I
fun.
love 80s music.
Let's hear it.
Grand Theft Auto Vice City. They had like the radio
Yes.
stations and it was set in the 80s. And every single radio station, every single genre, I loved. I would just literally, wasn't even smoking weed. I was just like an adolescent, like, oh, this is music is cool. I'm just gonna ride around hitting people in cars while I listen to this cool 80s.
It makes you feel like really cool. So there's this movie that I love that is it's called To Live and Die in LA, and the whole soundtrack, I recommend that movie, and the whole soundtrack is by Wang Chung.
Wow.
And they wrote every
Yes.
song of that movie. So I think that if you want to like drive around in LA and listen to that soundtrack, you will feel like you're in a movie. There's just something about it
I might
that's
do that.
so like, it's just so fun and so wacky. But they don't care. Like, I feel like 80s musicians, they knew they were being like corny and cheesy, but they like didn't care. They were like, that's okay because we're having fun. And I don't know. I think they
It's
were
part of the
really
process.
sad too. There's like a sadness to like the happy songs, and that's what I like the most. I don't like songs that are just like, "Oh, we're so happy," like Justin Timberlake, like "Because I'm happy, clap along," or whoever that is.
That's him.
Well,
No,
there-
wait, that's
Oh, that's
Pharrell.
Pharrell.
That's
Like,
Pharrell.
I don't like
Timberlake
songs-
made the knockoff song
Can't
Fight
Stop
the
the
Feeling,
Feeling.
which was him just trying to do Pharrell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like whenever a song is just like, I'm happy, because it's like we're not. Like, we need it to be like make us feel good, but for there to be like a layer of like darkness, if that makes sense.
Well, speaking of not being happy, you weren't happy in the 80s unless you were a white man. So
That's
these
true.
movies showcase
Unless
that.
you're a white man.
These movies
doing
showcase that.
cocaine,
Cocaine,
big drug
yes.
of the 80s.
let's talk about the movies that we chose for this prompt. And I chose 1984's right on the cross line. Very close. Couldn't pick something before 1984. That's right. Ghostbusters.
Really good. Really good. But incredible soundtrack by Ray Parker Jr.
Exactly.
Did he do the whole
You
soundtrack, or did he just do that one?
Well,
he
the
did
only
2 songs.
song
I
that
think he did like
matters.
2 or 3. He did like 2 songs on it.
Makes
I
me
think.
feel good. It's the best line. The best line of the whole movie. One of the best songs.
He really puts his heart into it too.
This is set in New York City. We following 3 scientists who have a university grant in whatever, I forgot the term, studies of ghosts and ghouls.
Paranormal something or other.
Paranormal studies. We have the fun, happy-go-lucky Dan Aykroyd, Vinkman. We have
You're already messing this up, my friend.
I am. Hold on, let me look.
Dan
at it.
Aykroyd
I got it right
plays
here.
Ray Stantz.
Ray Stantz. We have the nerd, the very stern, the straight man. Harold Ramis playing Egon Spengler. And then we have the horny pervert, but fun and lovable Bill Murray,
so
Dr.
horny.
Peter Venkman.
That scene in the beginning where he's having the students guess the shape on the other side of the card, and he's just using it to always say that the attractive female student is correct even when she's wrong. And is that Steve Guttenberg that he's shocking? I think
it
like
is.
the
Is
dude
it?
who he's shocking.
Wow.
And he's just zapping Steve Guttenberg even when he gets because he gets it wrong because he's not showing them, but even when he gets it right and he's just like, it's not your lucky day, and he shocks him.
It is Steve Guttenberg. What a funny guy to
It's
shock.
Gutenberg. Everybody wants to shock Steve. He shocks him so hard his gum falls out of his mouth.
This
Sorry,
is
Leonard.
truly,
Keep going.
this is truly a star-studded cast.
It's a very great cast. It's about, we're following them, and in this world, there is a lot more paranormal activity, but we come to find that there is a certain large demonic ghost fucking demon who is conjuring all of these paranormal activities to be happening more so, making them more prevalent in the time. And they create the Ghostbusters, where they trap and capture ghosts while creating havoc along the way. And we are following them and a certain woman, Sigourney Weaver, who is having what's the name? What is it? Zool. I almost said Ghoul. Zool is the antagonist in this movie, the all-powerful ghost entity, and he's in her apartment, in her fridge. It's where the certain location is, and he takes over her body, and they have to come shut him down and defeat him.
And I believe this is a true story.
Because you weren't born
I
when this movie
believe
came out,
this
so you
is
think that it
actually
documented.
based on a true story. I
Interesting.
believe this stuff, you guys. Like, no joke. I do. And I think...
Do you believe in ghosts?
Film, it's real.
No,
Do you
I'm
believe in ghosts,
serious.
actually?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Do you believe in ghosts in the way that this movie presents them, or you just believe in like the afterlife, like some sort of remaining specter?
I guess like the way that I believe in ghosts, if you're thinking of a movie, it would probably be the movie Ghost with Demi Moore.
Okay.
I do think that it's like that. I think there are elements in this, in like Ghostbusters, that I do think are real. I think that people can be possessed.
Possessed?
Okay, yeah, that part.
Like, yeah,
that part is the
that has
yeah.
happened. Like,
All
that
right.
is actually something that happens.
Quinn, do you believe in ghosts?
No, absolutely not. I'm a normal person.
Normal?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm
paranormal.
kidding. I'm kidding.
No. I don't know.
I don't, but I'm one of those. I need to see it. If I had a supernatural experience, I would be the first person to be like.
So
yeah,
I
ghosts
have
are
had
real, but I haven't.
supernatural experiences. I believe that some
let
of
us
my
know.
like
Unburden yourself.
some of my ghost ancestors, they will try to communicate with me, and this is something I found out. I did not know that this is what they do, but they will try to like. So I remember one time I was like going to hang out with somebody that I shouldn't have been hanging out with, you know. And all of a sudden,
A boy?
yeah, and all of
Yeah,
a
what does that mean?
Yeah, and all of a sudden, I'm at the door, and my phone, which was 100% normal, it was like there was nothing wrong with my phone. I'd never had any issues with it. 100% battery charged. It went completely dead. It went to zero juice, And then I found out later, somebody was telling me that and I felt the presence of like my aunt. And someone told me later that when you're like your guardian angel or like ghosts, people are trying to communicate with you, sometimes they'll go through electricity and it'll drain electricity. So there were like examples of this, might be your phone would go from like 100% to 0. And that happened to me. And I went in to the home and I charged my phone immediately and I left. Like after I charged my phone a little bit so that I could like get home. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but to charge it up from 0, you probably have to at least get a glass of water or something.
I did get a glass of water. But I don't know. I just feel like that's weird, and that's happened to me several times.
I mean, I'm convinced, Leonard.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm. That was an experience for sure. I don't know what type of experience it was, but I believe. I mean, I believe in ghosts, but not necessarily believe in. Hold on, not necessarily believe in like there's dead people roaming or waiting.
No,
I believe that there is something that we can't see. There are energies and dimensions, or not maybe there's energies, there's things that the human mind cannot conceive, cannot perceive that are happening.
Like a different force.
And we may call that a ghost, but there's certain things that are happening that people see. And when I was like maybe 7 or 8 years old, I've been convinced, I've never even really told people about it, but I for sure saw some type of entity, something weird, in my bedroom at like the middle of the night, and I have always thought it was a ghost. I don't necessarily believe that, like, I don't really believe in the thought of ghosts, but I was like, that was something, you know. So
can you describe what the phenomenon was in your bedroom? Do you, as to the best of your recollection?
It was like an older woman in a chair, like a rocking chair.
Well,
yeah,
just like watching me.
Sounds
and I just saw it, and
good.
I just like was like, oh shit. And I just went back to sleep.
So you feel like she was there?
You're just like, I'm bored of this.
Did you feel like she was there to protect you, or what?
Did she drain your phone?
Yeah. What did your phone battery?
She drained my balls. It was my first wet dream.
All right. Okay. This is what happens when you give Leonard too much rope.
Leonard is the Bill Murray of this podcast.
Baby. Let's
the
go.
Bill Murray.
Yes, I'm for sure the Bill
he's
Murray.
I had this
Peter
as a question.
Venkman.
Let's do it now.
Quinn is Egon.
Oh, don't make me
Egon.
Quinn is Egon.
I'm obviously Rick Moranis. And Leonard.
Let me in! I'm outside!
When that happens to him again, like the 2 times he like clearly is keeping his eye at the peephole so he can bother Sigourney Weaver when she walks by, and he gets locked out of his apartment the first time, and then he's going back down the hallway after bothering her the second time. I'm like, that's like one of those things where, you know, hey, we all 3 do comedy. Let's have a quick rap about comedy, gang. But like, it's that thing where sometimes the funniest thing is the thing that you expect. And I feel like when you're learning comedy, a lot of people think, I'm going to go left when you expect me to go right because I think different. And it's like, that is not always the right choice. Sometimes people want to be like, do the funny thing. If there's a banana peel, slip on it. It's funnier than being like, I'm going to go around it. It's like, there's nothing that funny about that. So when he's walking back to his apartment after talking to her again, I'm like, oh, I hope that door is locked. And it's locked again. I'm like, that's great.
That is so...
Especially because there's a party happening inside, too. So he's just like, guys, I'm outside.
Guys, yeah, it's so sad.
Rick Moranis is so great in this
Speaking of banging on doors, what is your movie?
Leonard, you are the king of the transition today. That one was probably
really
the
good
third best of
transition.
the 3, but I appreciate it
Speaking
anyway.
of banging on doors.
Speaking of banging on doors, I think we all know where I'm going after that. My pick for best 80s movie also stars a slacker white guy, like a Bill Murray type. Not really, but, you know, a similarly freewheeling, free-spirited kind of guy. I'm talking about the 1986 John Hughes classic, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The movie starts with him faking sick in what's still, like, I'm just going to, you know, I will truck with not a lot of criticism of this movie as a comedy. You can talk about social element stuff outside it, but like him faking sick and his parents just eating it hook, line, and sinker always makes me laugh because Matthew Broderick plays it so pathetic and so
it's
like
really
over the
funny.
top. And his parents always are like, hang in there, slugger. And he's like, I'm so sick. Like, it's such a funny thank you.
And then like winking at his sister.
Yeah.
He can get his sister.
Meanwhile, his sister, who knows, is the only one who knows what's up. Like, in the entire town. Like, the running joke of everybody in town being like, save Ferris, like, is great. But yeah, this is just a high school kid. He is creative. He doesn't want to go to school. And it's about him enjoying his day off, dragging his best friend, who he does kind of abuse, Cam, who's like a negative person. If Ferris is a positive person, Cam is just like, I can't do anything.
To the yang.
Exactly. He's dragging Cam and his girlfriend all across Chicago while his principal is tracking him down, trying to catch him in the act. And his sister, Principal Rooney, who is also like maybe the funniest character in the movie.
Chef's Kiss, 80s villain. Like, if it's an 80s movie, you gotta have a really fucking annoying ass 80s villain who gets it.
He's just like
the
an
scene where
adult
he's
that's
running
like a
around
loser,
the high school.
like a loser adult who's mad that this kid is so cool, which is the funniest villain. He's like,
so funny.
That scene where he's like running around the high school trying to piece it together. First of all, the first part of the movie before he even goes to Chicago is I think like 40 minutes, but that also is like all the best stuff is like when he's not in school and you see all the parties reacting and the principal's like calling and then he's got like they're trying to get his girlfriend out of school, so they're pretending to be her dad, and he thinks he's on to him. And he's like, "Why don't you drag her bones down here to the school to find out?"
That was so funny.
oh, and then there's the really,
and then
really sweet...
him running in the hallway, and he like when he gets to every single classroom door, say they don't see him running past the door.
I also really like the sweet like secretary lady where she's like Ed.
Yeah, she's so
like
good.
Ed. She's always like kind of what Ed Rooney, but I forget her name. But she's been in like everything.
She keeps pulling pencils out of her hair, like she doesn't realize how many pencils she's just tucked away in her hair stuff.
Edie McClurg.
She's great.
My favorite delivery maybe in the whole film too is when he's like Ferris Bueller threatens everything that I'm trying to run at this school. He defies my authority, blah blah blah. And then they just go to the secretary and go, "Oh, the kids love him. They think he's a righteous dude."
The dickheads,
the kids love him.
The Crips, the dickheads, the punks. I was just like, holy shit.
Dude.
Yeah, she was a great character.
Takes place in Chicago, great city.
Yeah. I guess, like, the plot of it, first of all, I feel like everyone has seen Ferris Bueller. It is a kind of a coming-of-age movie where I feel like a lot of people... Like, my mom showed me this movie when I was probably still in middle school, but she's like, oh, you'll like that, you know. And I've seen it a dozen times since then. But, like, I do feel...
Also, both of these movies, but came on Comedy Central, like, all of the goddamn
They
time.
got a lot of play, I feel like, of our kind of generation. And I think these movies are cross... Obviously, they both came out before we were... But, like... I just think they were very, they're very kind of significant movies.
I just kind of thought about a movie that I probably should have, that resonated more with me, like just in my, have y'all seen the movie Mannequin?
Yes.
I have not, but I know of it. It's about a mannequin that comes to life.
Yes, it is about a mannequin that comes to life and a dude that falls with it, and it's in the 80s. And Kim Cattrall? I think Kim Cattrall is the mannequin. Damn, I've watched that movie so many times, and I really love that movie. And I haven't watched that movie in like 20 years. I need to rewatch that.
You haven't
watched that movie since the 80s?
Isn't that the guy that's in that? He was also in Pretty in Pink. Like the sweet guy.
I've never seen Pretty in Pink.
Oh, okay.
Well, but I haven't either. But you bring up another point that I feel like I have to underscore is like the 80s is, to my opinion, but I never got into all of his movies. But like, you know, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink,
16 Candles.
16 Candles. John Hughes was kind of the director of the 80s. I'm not saying he was the best necessarily, but I do feel like he's the most associated with that era. And to me, Ferris Bueller is his funniest movie. I would say it's his best movie, but I haven't seen all of them. But like, I do feel like that John Hughes 80s teen comedy, when we're talking about films from the 80s, is like, it can only, you know,
he was like the Judd Apatow of the 2010s.
Exactly. That's perfect,
yeah.
Alyssa. If you're going to talk about 2000s comedy, you can't not talk about Judd Apatow. If you're going to talk about 80s comedies, it's John Hughes. Not exclusively, but definitely he's the dominant force.
Yes. I watched the first John Hughes movie I ever saw was 16 Candles, and I related to it so much because nobody ever forgot my birthday, but I felt like they did, if that makes sense.
Is that what
The
the
movie is
getting
about
butthurt about people
the
remembering
movie
your
is
birthday.
about a young girl and her whole family forgets her birthday, and she's like, this whole family has gone totally outer limits. Like, I would always like quote all the things she said, even though of course nobody ever forgot my birthday. But yeah, it's just the whole day is her like.
But that doesn't give you the right. You still have the right to get upset about it, Alyssa.
But nobody.
Just because they remembered
I know
it.
exactly. I still have the right to be upset. But yeah, it's just about like an angsty teen, like Molly Ringwald, and she's just like palling around, and and then she's just whatever. But it's very problematic now when you rewatch it. There's a lot of
all these 80s movies are hella problematic.
really like a lot of like rapey stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's like you have to look at it in context. Like, it's not. I'm not saying it's right, but it's just like thing. Even there's this one movie with Sarah Jessica Parker called "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." Okay, and it's about this like a young Sarah Jessica Parker and Helen Hunt, and they want to be in a dance competition, and it's very like fun and sports movie. But the side character is like her little brother that's trying to just touch everybody's boobs, and that's just like a side like fun piece of it.
Oh,
and
that's
he's like
cool.
literally
That's
like going
cool.
up to girls and like touching them, and like it's so funny to me because I'm not saying that that's like, oh, it's okay, but like you can tell that it, like in that time period it was just like, that's funny, that's a funny character.
And it's like, not only is that
Yeah.
exactly that's funny, but then it's like, as a little boy watching that, it's like, oh, that's
yes,
funny.
as
that's
a little
cool.
boy,
It's like,
yes, you're like, that's
God
normal,
damn it.
I should do that anyway.
You heard it here first, folks. Alyssa Sabo.
I
is
am pro.
horny little bros. doing
Little
whatever they can get away
bros
with.
can fondle.
Oh my god.
Well, isn't there? I haven't actually seen All Pretty in Pink, but isn't there a scene where like they steal her underwear and like hold it up in front of the
Yeah.
school or something like that?
And I am also
Yeah.
pro that.
Okay. Wow. You're just taking all these. You're like the person that gets brought in The Wire, and he's like, "Let me take all the bodies so you
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
unsolved case." What's that
All
scene
I'm
with like
saying-
Weebay and The Wire? She's just taking all the
Oh,
problematic
that's
tropes,
hilarious.
and she's like,
That's
"Give me those too.
Yep,
I'll take
I'll
those."
take it. No, it's not good.
But honestly, Ferris Bueller, like overall, for an '80s movie, this is gonna come up during how well does it hold up. It's not that problematic.
It's not too bad.
I don't
which
think
is
so. I think
pretty
it's
good.
pretty innocent.
Yeah,
But
there's nothing really.
But I'm going to give you an
problematic
opening,
about
Leonard, as a because Alyssa and I have something in common, which is that we grew up on the East Coast. But no, it's that we're white. And Leonard, I guess I'm saying, like, to me, this is kind of, I grew up in suburbia. I didn't have like say as nice a house as Ferris, but like there were some in my town. Like this could be any town USA for like where I kind of grew up. I'm not to speak for you, Alyssa, but I'm curious if this movie to you, Leonard, was also kind of a kind of quintessential high school movie, or if that wasn't your experience with it.
Nah, I don't.
Because
I don't
Ghostbusters
think
is about ghosts, so but like
My
Ferris Bueller
experience
is
was
purporting
more
to show the high school
Ghostbusters.
experience.
Ferris Bueller was more like, damn, I wish I was rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as far as cultural experience, like, damn, that must be nice. But I don't think there wasn't like, oh yeah, you gotta watch Ferris Bueller. Oh, Ferris Bueller is the man. Like, I realized it from like culturally, from like other people feeling about it and like talking about it. But as far as like, oh yeah, I don't even think people really talked about it. I think it was just on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's just like a movie that everyone has seen.
The
So
other
it gets
thing-
referenced.
The other thing about Ferris Bueller, which I'm not saying it's the first movie to do this, and we are very strict that we don't acknowledge movies before 1984, so maybe it is. But I cannot recall a movie earlier than this where the main character speaks directly to the camera. Now, Leonard and I are big Malcolm in the Middle fans.
Yeah.
And that's something that Malcolm would use a lot to great effect. But I think it's so good in, like, especially the first part of Ferris Bueller where he's just talking about how he's getting one over
I
on his
thought that was
parents
cool.
to camera.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I was watching this with my roommates and my girlfriend and my little cousin. We all watched it together, and we were
had
all
everybody
laughing.
over. Why
Yeah,
didn't you
we were
invite
watching-
us?
Yeah, we were all watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it is very funny. But it started, and I was like, man, Adam McKay must have really loved this movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I wonder if that's his inspiration of just like talking to the camera, breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, I think
But
that it
that's
was,
what made.
there had to have been. I think there was a movie that did that. I'm trying to think because I just watched a movie.
there's a-
Yeah, like from.
I'm
Yeah,
sure it's
I'm
not
sure
the
it's a
first,
thing.
but like I do feel like it's the most, in terms of movies, the most iconic,
Yeah.
like talk direct to camera thing.
Yes, definitely.
And he only does it at the beginning of the movie. It's not like a repeated.
That
he
is
doesn't
kind of
always
funny.
do it, but
he only does it
there
at the
is
beginning.
that
At the
moment
end.
at the end where
At the
Rooney
end.
catches him. He's looking for the
Yeah.
key, and then his sister comes out and bails him out, which is a nice moment. And then he has that great, because he doesn't even say anything, where he looks to Rooney, he looks to his sister, he looks at the camera, and then he looks back. And I was like, oh, that's a nice, like, bring that back. Also, at the very end, which I always thought was
He's
so
like, it's
funny,
over.
he's coming out of the shower or whatever, and he's like, or no, that's earlier. But either way, he's like, you're still here? Go. It's
Oh,
over.
yeah.
Like,
I feel like I remember my dad would always like quote that. Like that's like a dad thing. Be like, you're still here? Go, get out. Like, but I thought
I just don't think he liked you very much.
Yeah,
Alyssa.
exactly. I thought that there was I thought Ferris was not as well off as Cam. I thought that they kind of
Cam was super
like
rich.
I remember being like
He's living in a glass house in the woods.
Yeah, I remember being like, what's going on with that guy? I mean, I didn't necessarily, I wasn't like, oh yeah, like I relate to like Ferris's house, but like I remember being like, who lives like this? Who has a glass house in
Exactly.
the woods?
But then we learn in the movie that him living in that super clean, super pristine glass rich house can be terrible because he couldn't touch anything, he couldn't do anything.
That's when we
If you
learned
live in a glass
that
house,
rich
don't
people that
rev
we're
your
supposed
car
to feel
backwards.
bad for rich people, which I notoriously never feel bad for rich people. But that movie tried to make us feel bad for Cam.
And
I could empathize with Cam, but
I was going to say the same. Shout out to Alan Ruck, the oldest, most spoiled Roy child on Succession now. He's still killing
He
it.
is killing
I was
it.
gonna bring this up. All I was seeing was a young Connor Roy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because it's like he's like basically the same exact character. And Austin at the end was like, I think this could be in the same universe as Succession because he has a different mom. He has a different mom.
Oh.
Maybe like this is like when he starts and there's a period he's in Chicago, and I was like, yo, that's
That
hilarious
is really
if
funny.
It would be funny if
What's his origin story?
1980 a 1986 Brian Cox comes home in a deleted scene. He's like, "What the fuck is happening to my car?" Like he's just chewing him out. But all Cam's moments, like I honestly think rewatching this movie, obviously Ferris is the character that you want to be probably, but like Alan Ruck is so funny from the moment that you see him, and when Cameron was in Egypt, like all the like self-pity he has, and then that moment where he's like, he's gonna keep calling me, he's gonna keep calling me, he's gonna keep calling me, or the phone call with Rooney where he's pretending to be like, pardon my French, but you're an asshole.
Yeah.
He's doing that little like dance with his suspenders while he's talking on the phone. Alan Ruck hits home run after home run in this movie.
So are you
That's
saying
my
that he
point.
kind of steals it for you? Are you more kind of like wanting to be Cam?
Watching it-
like as an adult watching
No,
it?
I don't know that I want to be the character, but watching it from first of all, he's the character who arcs, not to be like film. This is a film
Ferris
podcast. Alyssa.
Bueller
Leonard
doesn't
and I
really
are
arc?
cineists. Not really. He's doing the same
Ferris,
thing he's always
you're right.
done.
Ferris doesn't arc.
No, Cameron
Cam
arcs.
has a
Cameron learns to
huge
man
arc.
up. Yeah, and I
Huge
like
arc. The
I
biggest
like his. I like his. I think he is good in the drama scenes at the end too. By the way, I was going to ask this, so we might as well go through it now. When that car goes out the back of the thing, and Ferris is like, "Your dad hates me anyway. I'll say it was me." I'm like, "Yes, great, thank you very much. You stay here. I'm going to go inside, and when my dad gets home, you talk to him." Like, I would absolutely let Ferris take that heat, but the fact that Cam doesn't means that he's grown.
I mean, that part
but I would not have
gave
done
me
that.
chills.
Yeah, it's good. He's like, we're gonna have
that
a little
part pissed
chat.
me
I had
off because I was like, God damn it, Ferris got this motherfucker Ferris, man. If he didn't take the car out, but then he's like, if I didn't let you take the car out, then this wouldn't have happened. I was like, no, Ferris is getting away with everything. Listen, I'm gonna tell you this right now. Alan Ruck steals the show.
Wow.
He steals the show. in this
Looking at
movie.
it-
he's so damn good.
We're all interested in comedy. I do think he's no doubt the funniest guy. Well, Rooney is very funny, but like
Rooney is very
of the
funny.
three of
Yeah, he steals the show. But if there's any character that I want to be in this movie, it's not Ferris Bueller. It's Rooney, because I'm trying to ruin some children's lives. Fuck those kids, okay? And I'll do a better
this-
job
We
God,
haven't
than
even,
motherfucking Rooney.
talked about the portrayal of his girlfriend, who's just
Sloane.
pretty and doesn't really have a personality.
True.
I never related to her. I was just like,
I had a major crush on Sloane.
yeah, I'm sure
when
you
I first saw
did,
this
because
movie.
she's just a pretty face.
Yeah, I did.
And she goes along with whatever Ferris tells her to do.
She did whatever Ferris fucking
Of
told her
course
to
you
do.
liked her, Quinn.
Do you have a kiss for daddy?
He's like, come on, bro, you're doing too much right now. He's the king of doing too much, man. I was like so happy when like they're in the restaurant and they're like, no, Ferris, you're taking it too far. And he's like, you can never take it too far. And I was like, this man is going to become a senator.
Yeah.
Sloane gets to do some fun stuff. There's that moment where she's like calling about like the sausage king of Cincinnati or whatever. And it's like rakishly handsome. She gets to have some fun, but I agree. She's the third of three characters. Movie's not that concerned.
Sloane is like that 2022 feminist that are like, wait, white men are terrible? It's like, yeah, you were there. You contributed.
Well, and
you allowed this to happen.
I think I am like maybe to just see someone. I mean, John Hughes, like as far as like white women goes, he put Molly Ringwald on the map, who was not a classically like gorgeous like 80s woman. Do you know what I mean? Like she just had red hair and she was kind of like whatever. She was like she was just like
she was a little more girl next door than like drop dead gorgeous.
So and she does have he did do movies where the leads were kind of interesting and had, unlike some of Judd Apatow's movies where it's just like the women are just there being like, what are you doing, Seth? So it was a little bit of that where Sloane was like, what are you
Leslie Mann
doing?
was great in that movie that you just quoted.
Wait, what's
let's get back
Seth
on
Rogen.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, anyways, Ghostbusters.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the strong female characters in Ghostbusters, like Sigourney Weaver, who's possessed
Sigourney Weaver is a pretty good character. Before she gets possessed, she's a pretty good
strong,
character.
Yep.
What does she do?
She fucking is. She calls them out on their shit.
She calls a man to help fix her problem.
Yeah,
okay.
she calls.
She shuts down Rick Moranis. Let's also talk about Rick Moranis, man. This man was at the height of stardom in the 80s. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, 80s, 90s. He was killing the game. And he gave it all up for his children. Wow.
He did?
That's why I'm not going to ever have kids.
Wait, he did?
Yeah, he's like... Yeah, so he could like be a part of their lives.
His wife unfortunately passed away sometime in the 90s, and he'd obviously like Little Giants. He still had a career in the 90s, but he's from Canada, and he was like, I'm going to step away to raise my kids, which is very cool.
Wow,
everybody loves Rick Moranis.
What a legend.
Nobody doesn't like Rick Moranis. I will say I did have an issue with this movie.
Okay, I'm going to say this: we're talking about Rick Moranis, who was in Ghostbusters. Great guy, right?
Yeah.
Did y'all know that Matthew Broderick killed 2 people?
2 people?
Why am I not shocked?
1989 or 1987, 1989 it might have been. He while drunk driving in England.
Ireland.
He killed 2 people.
Was it England?
It might be Ireland. Killed 2 people and they got a $275 fine, and that was it.
So he's paid his debt. No, that's not funny.
Oh my god. That's like
I
Ted
did know that.
Norwood.
I did know that.
Literally.
Here's another interesting wrinkle to that you're talking about, Leonard. He was with his then girlfriend at the time. She was in the car. Do you know who that person is?
No.
Jennifer Grey, his sister in this movie.
Oh.
That's right,
goodness.
Leonard. Back-to-back incest pods, baby. That's what we're talking about.
She was in the car with him?
LOL.
She was his girlfriend at the time, if I have that right. Now, we don't want to make light of an actual, but okay, 1987, the year after Ferris Bueller came out. Leonard brought this up. It's not my fault. He was driving a rented BMW. What is it with him and ruining nice cars? Okay. He's driving a rented BMW in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland. He crossed into the wrong lane and collided head-on with a Volvo. The driver, who was 28, and her mother, who were 63, were both killed instantly. He was vacationing with Jennifer Grey, whom he'd begun dating in semi-secrecy during the filming of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The crash publicly revealed their relationship. Well, that's not the most important part of that. Oh, and now everyone's going to know we're dating.
But was he drunk?
Broderick told police he had no recollection of the crash and did not know why he'd been in the wrong lane. What I first remember is waking up in the hospital with a very strange feeling going on in my leg. He had suffered leg and rib fractures, a concussion, and a collapsed lung. Jennifer Grey suffered whiplash, which she later had to get surgery for. So the family later forgave Broderick. Now, he was never, just to set the record, he was never charged or accused of driving drunk, but he also never was able to say, honestly, and I'm not to excuse it, but like he may have just been in the wrong lane because they drive on the other side of the road in Ireland. That doesn't excuse you for not knowing the driving rules. I'm just saying he didn't have to be drunk to make that mistake. I would make that mistake, and that's why I don't plan on driving
in
if
Ireland.
I could.
That's so scary.
It's not yeah.
I'm saying, so one of these characters murdered some people, the other one did not.
Leonard.
That's all I'm saying.
Leonard did his research.
Yeah, Leonard came with like negative campaigning.
Yeah, he's like, And also,
listen, we don't have anything positive
when,
to say. We're gonna go negative then.
When did he start dating Sarah Jessica Parker, whom he is still married to?
I don't know.
They were like a power couple in the 90s.
Oh yeah, no, they're still.
sure.
And I think are they not still together?
Yeah, they're still together.
They got married in 1997.
Yeah,
so
they were.
It's been 25 years.
Power couple.
Wow.
When you Google Matthew Broderick, it's Matthew Broderick net worth, Matthew Broderick movies, and Matthew Broderick car accident.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Okay. But let's talk about Ghostbusters. First of all, Ghostbusters is a very silly movie, very 80s.
Very fun.
Very 80s. Man, the first scene in the library. You see all those people in the library?
Yeah.
You're not gonna see that many people in the library right now.
So many people in the library.
There's so many people.
I mean,
in the library.
each scene of Ghostbusters is just like wackier and wackier, and I love the way they portray the ghosts. It's very 80s to me because they're green. It reminds me of it has like a Casper vibe. You know what I mean? Where they're just like, woo.
The special effects don't all hold up too, but some of them are pretty cutting edge.
They
Some of them
hold
are
up
pretty good
for
the
me.
time.
I prefer special effects over CGI.
They also do fun practical things like the books sliding across the
Yes!
shelf, or like
That's so
the
hard
cards
to do
flying all over
that.
the place.
The cards flying.
The eggs. Yeah.
The way that the way that you can taste the green goopy stuff. That's you know what I mean? There's something about that stuff that you can feel it. It's almost like when you're watching it, you feel it. And I don't get that from movies today.
I like the line where
Okay.
they decide to go into business, and Dan Aykroyd is really my parents have that house. It's where I grew up. And then Bill Murray goes, "Oh, it's okay. Everybody has 3 mortgages today." Which the idea of putting a kind of a supernatural kind of Casper-y ghost movie in with a SNL guys slacker comedy works quite well. I do think that's the case. And then you throw in Sigourney Weaver of Alien, and it works even better. I did have an issue. This was a movie that I had never sat down and watched all the way through until you gave it to me, Leonard.
What?
Wow. I can believe that.
It's
I can believe
also a movie that I had seen so much from catching the last hour on TBS or catching the first 30 minutes that I probably had seen it in composite, but I had never sat down and watched it straight through. So I knew it, I knew the beats, I knew the story. I had not watched it. So there were some scenes that I hadn't seen before when I watched it this time. But
first of all, this movie. Oh wait, is there a point you were making, Quinn?
Yeah, I found it upsetting because one of the things I missed was that it is clearly implied that they're possessed, but it is clearly implied that Rick Moranis finally does have sex with Sigourney Weaver when they are possessed as the keymaster and the gatekeeper, and that's what leads them to call Zool, and I found that upsetting. Because they're using their human bodies, and maybe they'll neither of them remember it. But I'm that's we're talking about 80s comedies, and I guess we'll talk more about it when things don't hold up. But I was like, I don't like that. That makes me uncomfortable.
Now this is gonna be maybe I don't remember that, and we will talk about
this,
it now.
Alyssa?
I always was more weirdly enough more of a fan of Ghostbusters 2.
I have seen Ghostbusters 2 before, and I don't like it. And that's why I think
because I like the weird painting, and I like that guy who's
it's a lot.
Ooh!
It's a lot goofier.
It's so goofy, but obviously the first one is great too. But my memory of a kid was always kind of being more into the second one.
That's funny you say that because I was like, all right. This one is a lot, this is a wackier choice, a goofier choice. But the first Ghostbusters, I was misremembering, and I think I was remembering Ghostbusters 2 because rewatching it, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't as goofy as I thought.
Oh.
It's still goofy, but it's a lot more grounded at the beginning.
Yeah.
And
they take steps to show the theoretical science.
Exactly.
I kind of appreciated that. When they're showing how they store them, I'm like, okay, I kind of understand what you're saying.
Well, they had to set that up for the story for the third act. But there's a a Safe Right, a great value version of Rooney in this with the EPA director.
Yes, the EPA director Peck,
another redheaded. Maybe
who is that guy?
They chose Rooney to be like this dude because he's a redheaded
real weird guy.
They
high
look kind
school
of the
principal
same.
energy.
He has very.
I have limited authority, but I'm going to flaunt it. Kind of.
Oh, I love it when he's like, if that woman, if they leave, arrest him. He's like, don't tell me how to do my job. And like he's trying to tell the cop what to do when he finally gets the warrant.
It's also funny that EPA is the villain. That's a very 80s
thing.
Environmental Protection Agency are the bad guys.
I just thought it was cool.
Mr. Peck. He's like, okay, Mr. Pecker, it's Peck.
I like that they're like worshiping this painting. I just thought that was so cool. It was kind of bringing art back, making art.
Ghostbusters 2 brought art back.
Ghostbusters 2, art was dead.
Jean-Michel Basquiat and Ghostbusters 2 were all about the 80s art scene.
Anyways, okay, but back to we can't talk about Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters 2 has a great Bobby Brown song, "On Our Own," which I think is
I
enjoy more than the Ghostbusters song. We
I
got
don't think so.
Make
it.
We gotta get the job.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's more of a. It doesn't have that nostalgic like feel, and it doesn't have like him literally be like, "I ain't afraid of no ghost" in it.
No.
But it's a banger.
Here's a question: is Ghostbusters a Halloween movie? I got in an argument about this with someone. I did not think it was. I think you can watch it on Halloween, but you know what I mean. Like I don't think it's only Halloween.
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
And you know what? We might as well just go ahead and start with our first talking point criteria: pop culture. And I'm gonna say that Ghostbusters is a Halloween movie because in the pop culture reference, people dress up as Ghostbusters. There are ghosts in it. It's got a spooky element. The song.
Every October.
Yeah, man. I think it's a Halloween movie.
I definitely think it's a Halloween movie.
Interesting.
I would for sure watch it around Halloween. But also I would watch it any time of the year. But that's also me. I don't need to be watching Halloween movies on Halloween. But I do think it's a Halloween
But like you only
movie.
watch It's a Wonderful Life around Christmas time. That's why it's a Christmas movie. You know
No,
what I'm saying?
not me.
Like I agree. I think
I
that
don't-
you
what-
can
what movie are you
watch
talking about,
It's a
Quinn?
Wonderful Life whenever.
I watch Christmas
What movie is this?
I trap myself.
I watch
It's a movie.
What
It was
movie is this?
re-released in color in the 80s, Leonard. It's okay.
Okay.
I watch Christmas movies any time of year because I want to remember what it feels like to have the Christmas spirit inside of me. So I will watch a Christmas movie tonight. Maybe I'll watch Jingle All the Way tonight. I don't know.
I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life.
That's unhinged. That's an insane thing to say.
Think about it
is.
though, Quinn. We only get to watch Christmas movies during Christmas. What about the rest of the year when you're feeling down, you're in the dumps, and you need a little Christmas spirit pick-me-up? Turn on the tube and watch Home Alone. Now, Home Alone is a movie I could watch anytime.
Oh, Home Alone. Yeah, I think Home Alone you can watch
Christmas.
any time of the year.
Die Hard.
There's nothing that makes me more depressed in the dog days of March than watching a movie about Christmas, which is so many months away that I know that's having the
but
the opposite effect.
it puts you in that mood. Like when I'm watching a Christmas movie for 1.5 hours, it's Christmas. Are you guys not watching movies the way that I'm watching them? Hello.
I don't think we are, but
I don't think you are. We'll have to watch a movie together. I'll show you how I watch a movie.
These movies have a lot of influence over you. Obviously.
I get really swept away. That's what, like, when I watch a movie, I'm really in it. I pretend
which one of these movies do you think has a larger pop cultural influence? Because this is a tough one.
I think this is very tough.
Ghostbusters. It's got to be Ghostbusters. Are you kidding me?
Interesting.
Think about all the merch. Think about all the
remakes,
the reboots, the remakes.
They had an animated series.
Of course, there's a lot of there's a lot of like Bueller. People always quote Bueller, but like
Bueller.
Ghostbusters is like by far like pop culture wise. If you think of 80s and you show somebody a photo of like any type of like merch from Ghostbusters, they're gonna know. And whereas Ferris Bueller, not as much. Like internationally, I think Ghostbusters has more selling. Ferris Bueller is more just kind of like American.
So I think it's the overall idea of like it's a fun idea, it's a fun concept, like dudes catching ghosts, and it's like a Halloween costume and stuff.
It's a Halloween costume.
But as an overall film, like in the dialogue and in the shots, I don't think there's a shot that people might remember. Maybe obviously the Big Marshmallow Man and like Sigourney Weaver is Zool. Yeah, Stay Puft is Zool as when on the top of the building. Like, there's some epic shots, but like Ferris Bueller's does have some cultural influence, I think, with just like the whole movie is just, I don't know.
Yeah.
How many people's high school yearbook quote has been, life moves at you pretty fast. Life comes at you pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you could miss it. I think Ferris Bueller.
I'm going to tell you, I don't think a single person at my high school quoted that, Quinn. I don't know if that really works. Maybe in the 90s people was quoting that, but nobody's. No.
Dude, if you don't think that's, I'm not saying it was mine. I'm saying it might have been Alyssa's.
What is it?
But
no,
I'm saying
mine was more of like a Boy Meets World quote, which was, "Life's hard. Get a helmet."
Okay, well that's the same idea.
Similar idea.
I think
I tried to use a quote from Chappelle's show, and it was the only thing I put in, and the school wouldn't do it.
For me, it was the Bible.
I didn't have
it was the Bible all the way.
Oh God. I also think like the guy from Stranger Things, Joe Keery, the guy with the hair from Stranger Things, like did a whole run of Domino's commercials where he played Ferris Bueller. We talked about, in terms of pop culture, people talking direct to camera. Malcolm in the Middle does not exist in the way that it exists if Ferris Bueller wasn't a thing.
I don't think so.
I think so. I think that's absolutely
Breaking the
case.
fourth wall is something that Shakespeare did, Quinn.
Breaking the fourth wall is a thing. Any movie that has narration is breaking the fourth wall, but in where the character stops, looks at the camera, is
I'm
a
saying
different
that's
kind
something
of...
that was originated.
They were
during,
doing that in the
during,
70s.
plays.
What movies, Leonard?
I want to say,
That's
like,
right.
didn't they do
Yeah,
that shit
you
in, like,
don't
the Naked Gun movies, Airplane and shit?
Yes,
They did that
yes.
shit in comedies. We'll see.
I have to.
All I'm
say
saying is,
Ghostbusters.
there's no question Ghostbusters has the larger pop cultural influence.
I think
And
you guys are
wait,
right.
no,
a
listen to me.
Ghostbusters
They did-
movie just came out, Quinn. A Ghostbusters movie just
Listen
came
to
out.
me. Of all the movies before Ferris Bueller's Day Off ever even came out, they did that in Annie Hall. They did it in American Psycho. They did it in Fight Club, Spaceballs, High
Fight Club is not
Fidelity.
pre.
High Fidelity.
The High Fidelity is not
None of
free.
those movies were before.
Oh, Annie Hall was. Annie Hall was.
Annie Hall
was, but if you've seen Annie Hall, you know it's not the same. There's just a moment where like a guy steps out. Again, I'm not saying people never address the thing. I'm saying like hop out of scene and go, all right, fine. I'll drop that point.
All right, well, here
we are
comes
not
the
talking
next
about
one. How well do
No. We can't go on bow bow.
Okay, yes, huge.
Okay, that's pretty
Huge,
good.
huge.
Ooh,
That's a good one.
pretty good.
That's a good one.
Boom.
But it still doesn't beat. It still doesn't beat. I ain't afraid of no
I
ghosts.
think it does, but okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, that is a good
That's
one.
pretty good.
That whole scene where he's trying to race home and he's trying to race around and he's like jumping on the trampoline and stuff, that has been parodied
Look,
a million times.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying if I had to choose Ghostbusters over Ferris Bueller's Day Off as far as pop culture relevance, it's got to be. It's Ghostbusters.
Okay.
Little kids know Ghostbusters.
Little kids know Ghostbusters because they keep remaking them to diminishing returns. They keep remaking the Terminator movies too. The fact that Ferris
But
Bueller
that
is
doesn't
still
take
known
away.
having had
That doesn't
no...
take away from the power of
From
the first one.
of the pop culture
As
reference.
far as
Yeah,
Terminator
that's the only
goes,
thing we're talking
as
about.
far as Terminator goes, the constant remake of them just proves its pop culture worthiness. So the constant remake and reboot of Ghostbusters proves the worthiness and the impact, in my opinion.
I think Ghostbusters is like Star Wars, where there's really only like one good movie, and then people just keep trying to catch.
Yeah.
I agree. That doesn't have anything to do with pop culture. We're only talking about the first Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
but like, it's more a thing of like this is marketable, more so than this is good. Let's talk about how these movies hold up, though,
but
Leonard.
But I will say this: there was a Ghostbusters 1, there was a Ghostbusters 2, and then they didn't make another one for like 20 years, 25 years, like 30 years, like so. It's just that we're in a really shitty time where they rebooted it, and then I don't even know what the last one was.
That's
but
the power of love, and that is not what we're talking about today. We are not talking about Back to the Future.
How well did these movies hold up?
Ghostbusters has some stuff that you might,
Yeah, there's some.
How about the fact that there's four
Venkman
Ghostbusters?
is a creep.
How about the fact
Venkman's a
there's
creep.
4 Ghostbusters? 3 of them are white men and they're professors. They all start with doctor, and then Ernie Hudson is like working
janitor.
class, which is fine. You can have a working class character. I'm just saying I feel like they recalibrate that. Although they didn't. They made Leslie Jones the same type of character in the 2016 version. But
It's like
black people can't be doctors in the 80s, Leonard?
But is
no, they could not. They could
Dan
not.
Aykroyd Jewish?
They could be doctors, but they couldn't be cast as doctors.
It's also fucked up. He arrives like with
Harold Ramis is Jewish.
That's true.
I'm just kidding.
But I'm just saying also it's one thing for him to not be the one non-doctor in the group. That's fine. You don't need to be a doctor to operate a proton pack or whatever. He also shows up way too late in the movie. Like it's like, why not introduce him earlier? It seems like an odd choice.
That is weird.
They were overbearing. They needed help. It made sense. At least they had a goddamn black person who was in the prominent member of the cast. So I'm gonna give them that. Also, the women actually had like points of views and thoughts.
What was
like
it? What was the
Sigourney Weaver character and the Janine Minks, their secretary.
Annie
she didn't give a
Potts.
fuck. She did what she Annie Potts. She wanted to do what she wanted. You know what I'm saying? She didn't give a fuck who they were. If they were white men doctors, she did what she wanted.
She was like
to do.
doing her nails. Exactly.
Sigourney Weaver is obviously a huge movie star and much bigger than Mia Sara, who plays Sloane. But I think we're kidding ourselves if we're pretending that that's like she's possessed for half the movie. She turns into a dog.
Sigourney. But
And she does a great job. She that's just a role where she gets to.
it's powerful.
I get to be the strong.
It is,
I get to be the strong woman playing an instrument, and now I get to be a dog. Like that's crazy. A lot of people couldn't do that. A lot of people couldn't
and
do
it's
that. You know what I'm saying?
powerful that so many people
have
are
skills.
trying to help her. And I related to that. I would
I
have
love that
loved for so many people to come to my rescue.
I love that
I will
moment
say this,
where
though.
she's saying to Bill Murray, she's like, "I want you inside me," and he goes, "I think there's a couple people in there already."
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, Dr. Venkman's creepy, but he's funny.
He's a college professor trying to have sex with his student.
And that's hot.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Oh.
Doesn't hold up. Alyssa.
She's
Look,
an adult.
Okay,
She's
I
an adult.
was never like when I was in college. Nobody wanted to hook up with me. And I thought it would be cool if that would have happened, but yeah, no, that's obviously a little bit.
He's also making her believe that she has ESP, which is very funny, but also like a thing.
It's a little problematic.
I'm gonna say this.
It's not that bad.
There
though.
really isn't anything that bad in Ferris Bueller's. Like Ferris, it's just that the Buellers are just rich pieces of shit, which means it holds up.
Why are they
like
pieces
he's like
of shit?
When he's like, "Do you speak English?" And he's like, "What?
What
This
country
is
do you think this
America."
is, man?
Yeah. And then like she's on the phone speaking to English when she's like yelling at the cops. His sister says it too.
She says, "Speak it to English."
She says speak it in English at the end when she's calling the cops when the principal breaks into the thing.
I remember the scene.
Oh yeah, speak
And-
it to English.
She
goes-
said it at the end.
She
and
goes,
I was
I am very cute. I am very whatever." And she tells
Yo,
him,
that
on
was
intercom,
hilarious.
"I have
That
a
was
raging
hilarious.
What did
case
she
of
say?
herpes."
Oh yeah,
a raging case of herpes.
I love
But
that
no-
scene where she's calling her
No,
mom's
Ferris
office.
Bueller is a piece of shit. He's not a piece of shit. I'm lying. That's not wrong. That's not right. He's just an entitled douchebag. That's what he
He
is.
is a little entitled.
He's an entitled douchebag.
I think
He's
he's
fun.
doing a good thing for Cam.
He's
At the end of the day.
No. And you know what? And that's what I was about to say. He does bring a lot of positivity to people's lives because obviously everybody in the school loves him, and he's doing things to help out everybody in the school.
He's a bit of a narcissist. I'll
He's
say
a
that.
narcissist.
I will say
That's
that
what
he
it
is a
is.
narcissist.
Yeah.
The whole world.
Well, he's
revolves
an
around him.
entitled narcissist.
Well, most narcissists are. Like, show me a narcissist who's not entitled.
Well,
They
you know
are
what?
entitled.
No, I have coined this term, and someone's having an argument with me that like they can't be. I believe there's a lot of this thing where it's like negative narcissism, where it's like people only like they only talk about themselves, but like in a bad way. But they make everything about themselves, but in a bad way.
They're covert narcissists. It's covert passive-aggressive narcissists. They try to seem like, this is the thing, I read a whole book about it. They try to seem like, yes, you're right. They try to seem like, oh, I'm no good. I'm a piece of shit, and blah, blah, blah. But you're right. They actually do think really highly of themselves, and they're obsessed with themselves, and they want everybody to pump them up. But they're covert about it. Whereas, like, a classic narcissist is just, like, aggressive and in your face, like, I'm the best. I'm Ferris Bueller. But yeah, I think he's like, it's fun. My thing is like, I like whenever he's like, doing his little shower. And I mean, also, who hasn't pretended to be sick and skipped school? I did it.
Yeah, it's
I
like
did
he's a
it,
high
and I
school
got
kid.
caught.
It's
I
hard to
got
know.
caught so
no. I'm not
hard.
even talking.
You got
I'm not
caught
talking about him
playing
skipping
hooky?
school. I'm not talking about him skipping school. That part's not.
Well, you thought he ruined the parade? What are you angry about?
No. The movie was actually very fun. Like, I enjoyed the movie. I was laughing my ass off. It's very funny. But Ferris Bueller's a douchebag. I mean, there's no way around it.
There is something there is something that I don't like about, like, you know, obviously he's like helping Cam get out of his shell, but it's like he doesn't. And this is the thing. Like, I'll be the first to admit this. There was like within your friends. There was like the Cam, and then there was the Ferris, and I was more the Ferris, where I was just doing whatever I wanted and forcing my like weaker friend to do what I wanted them to do. And so I like see that where, do you know what I mean? Like, I see that I'm the Ferris, where I'm just like, we're doing what I want to do because I'm a psycho and I'm aggressive. But watching it does make you be like, okay, this guy's just kind of like dominating. Do you know what I mean? And he's like almost ruining his friend's life.
If we're talking about like the devil may care, everything is fine on the surface but problematic underneath nature of the 80s, is that not the perfect protagonist? I mean, he's basically a young Republican.
He is.
You know,
he is.
Kind of,
he literally is.
Well,
he's also he's a young Democrat too. Democrats suck just as bad as
Amen.
Republicans.
Amen, Leonard.
But this was the era of like Michael J. Fox playing Alex P. Keaton. I'm talking about like charismatic, like, you know, white men who've had the world handed to them, just being like, well, we can skip school. What does it matter? I'm just, you know, they get away with it.
Did you guys feel any sympathy for Edward Rooney?
No,
I didn't either. I was just like, why does he
And if we're
care?
talking about behind the scenes stuff, Edward Rooney, the actor who played him, wound up being involved in some child pornography charges in the 2000s.
Boy.
So,
Surprise.
and this is a character that Leonard aligned himself with earlier in the podcast. If you remember,
no.
he said he was so rude.
Oh.
He didn't know.
My God, that's so funny because I'm gonna say it. Whatever, it was a joke. I made a joke when we were watching it at the end of the movie, and I made the same joke about like, oh man, oh no, I was like, oh, it's gotta suck being that principal. It's like he's got to be around all those sexy children. He can't do anything with them. I didn't even know that he was the chopper. And then Austin was like, none of those children were sexy.
Oh my God.
I was like, that was a
scene where he's on the bus at the end, and
that's
the
when
girl who looks like perhaps a young an Alyssa Sabo type character. Just kidding.
I need to know.
Where she takes out the gummy bear and she goes, they're nice and mushy because they've been in my pocket.
That's the best way to eat a gummy bear. That's the best way to eat a gummy bear.
That
100%.
All right, like glasses, Alyssa. I'm just looking at your glasses. Wait, two things that held up: Charlie Sheen playing a drug addict.
That's so
very funny. Great cameo when he's hooking up with her at the end of the thing. Ferris
Wait,
Bueller's mom's 80s hair. Hilarious.
Okay.
Does not hold up, but it's spiky. It's beautiful. You cannot get away with that hairstyle.
I was about to go to the next one, but one thing I wanted to say was another thing that didn't hold up was making out with Charlie Sheen. But he did look like he had just done heroin and then got on set.
Dan Aykroyd gets a blowjob from a ghost in one of the montages of this movie.
That's just funny.
That's
just funny. That's funny.
How does that even work?
Okay. How does that even I'll tell you how it works.
That was like some scary movie shit.
All right, clear the floor for Alyssa to tell us.
Third,
your phone battery drains. Your mom listens to this podcast.
Oh yeah.
Boy. The third talking point and the most important talking point. It's
the most
season,
important. Alyssa, pay attention to this one.
This is a new season, so we have a new character actress.
Popular character actor.
Regina Hall in either one of these movies? I don't think she was. I don't think she would be old enough to be. She could have been a kid, but I don't think.
Regina Hall was not in Ferris Bueller because, as you mentioned, Leonard, Ferris Bueller is pretty white.
There is the one scene where those black kids are dancing to him lip syncing. Everybody's so enthralled with him lip syncing this song.
I know.
Where's the music playing from? I know it's a movie. It was just stupid. Anyway,
I'll say Regina Hall was high school aged when this movie came out. She could have been one of the Save Ferris.
No way.
Really
How
quick,
old?
She
can
looks
I
great.
just say something? For the longest time when I first saw that movie, I genuinely thought that was Matthew Broderick singing. I was like, wow, he's a really good singer. And then, like,
the fact that he was singing like Donkajane or whatever it was before, did you think that was him
I
too?
thought that was him.
He just had an incredible range.
I don't know. I
vocal
just
range.
was like, oh wow, he's good at singing. Anyways,
Wow, yeah, she would have been like 14 for the, or and it came out in 86, so she would have been 16. Wow, crazy. She could have been in.
She could have been a Save Ferris person in the high school, but probably not a big role for Regina Hall. You can make her Sloane, but I think there's not a lot of obvious spots for her in this movie.
Yeah.
But she's not in Ghostbusters either.
Yeah, there's nowhere she's in Ghostbusters. So,
Alyssa, what do you think of this segment? How's this segment sitting with you? Do you understand?
Can you explain it again? Where would Regina Hall?
Is Regina Hall in either of these movies? It's quite simple. It's yes or no. Unfortunately, in this case, it's no.
She's not in either one. And sometimes we'll ask,
she could be in Ghostbusters, like dealing with a ghost. I could see her being like,
I mean, she was in the scary movie.
Yeah, that's why I'm
movie movies.
Like her
scary
in the
movie
scary
movies.
movie movies. She was like so funny dealing with like scary things. I
Yeah.
can see her in Ghostbusters.
She kills it in the scary movie movies, but
Oh my God, when she's in the theater with all the food, hilarious.
Yeah.
I this is maybe not. Well, I'm not doing an impression. When she says Shakespeare in love, I laugh so hard every time. When they're in the theater and everyone starts stabbing her because she's being too loud.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm here to see. She's on the phone with her friends. She's like, we're just seeing Shakespeare in love. I just love that she always says Shakespeare. It's so funny. Damn, this is a good movie. Then she takes out her video camera and she starts bootlegging.
Hopefully we get Regina Hall in the movie. We'll see.
Let's get her on the pod.
Let's get her on the pod.
That's Regina Hall movie.
All right,
Scary
well, let's
movie
look at-
versus
She would be
Scary
if
movie
she
3.
would Sloane. She would be way more interesting than Ferris.
Probably.
Oh,
So they
way
wouldn't-
more
Yeah,
interesting.
because she would the whole time she would just be like calling him out, like, "What are you doing?" And she would not like Sloane. Like, it's
You
just
know what?
like,
Do you think Sloane was like, let's go to the museum? Maybe that was Sloane's part of the trip.
that's
like,
true.
we're going to the museum.
Yeah, that could be it.
You know?
She wanted to go. to the
Yeah,
museum.
I think Sloane is like somewhere between Cam and Ferris. She's not as much of like a leader as Ferris, but she's not as much. She like goes.
She
with the,
seemed
you know.
rich.
Cam was like,
Yeah,
let's
she
go to
did
the
seem
baseball
rich.
game. Cam was like, let's go. They're all rich. Did you see the house? Her
Yeah.
house?
Yeah,
Her house
yeah.
is huge.
That's what I'm saying, man. Reaganomics. It was a house of cards and it hadn't collapsed yet. Okay, everybody was doing great.
Baby
Let's go on
boomers.
to our fourth
Statistics.
Okay.
statistics. Leonard, do you want to look up your movie or should I go first?
Oh, I
on
have mine right here. I
You
got
go
mine
then.
right here. All right. Well, I don't see the box office, so I'll just start with her Rotten Tomatoes. God damn. Rotten Tomatoes is 97%.
97% for Ghostbusters.
Big 9.7 energy.
Wow.
Audience score 88%. But tomato meter 97. IMDb 7.8. That's pretty good.
Wow.
These are good scores.
And
I will say that it's the same Rotten Tomato meter people that tanked the female remake because they didn't like the girls were Ghostbusters, but that's okay. They love this one.
Wow.
Well, I
I'm
didn't
just
even.
saying.
See
I
it.
like the all girl, and damn, it made. Okay, talk about pop cultural reference. This shit made $295 million in the box office.
Ghostbusters did?
The girls with the
200
girls.
95. No. I'm talking about the original.
We're talking about
1985.
Brosbusters, Alyssa,
Gross.
not Girlsbusters.
Yeah, I did not see the one with the girls. I don't.
You didn't?
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
Not
I
really
didn't
my
like
style.
it,
Girls
I-
being in a movie? No thanks.
but
You did
I
choose
get what you're
80s.
saying, Alyssa. Like, who's going to help them when they get into trouble?
Yeah, I'm
You know
like,
what I mean?
I'm like, they cannot help themselves. Where are the men to come help?
Yeah, it's like New York City's
I'm
being
just kidding.
overrun by
I
ghosts, but I don't
obviously-
have anything to wear. I mean, that's a tough,
I just think that I don't think it does anything for feminism to do a shitty remake of a movie that was really good in the 80s. It's just like we can make a movie that's like fun. It doesn't mean like, wow, that's so feminist to put women in these man roles. It's like, no, we can do something new. I don't know. It just because then
I like
then
that.
you just
That's
get,
how I feel when they do that shit with black people. It's like, all right, man, we don't need a black Wonder Years.
Exactly.
Man. Just make
Let's
this,
make something
you know what I'm saying?
new.
Just fucking-
That's like you know what I mean? Like it's almost because then it's almost like doing a disservice. Because then people watching it are like, why did they do that? Like, you know what I mean? Then like the actually racist and like misogynist people are like, why are they doing this? And they get mad. And it's like, why not create something that's like good and original, and do you know what I mean? Like let Leonard create a show. He probably has a million great ideas. We don't need to redo Wonder Years anyway.
I've read some of the ideas. He's got a couple.
I bet he does. Give Leonard a show.
999,000 ones where he's probably too high when he came up with it. But
you know what I mean? Like it almost like does
totally know
like
what you
it's
mean.
almost like going backward. I don't know, whatever. If I if I were to ever get offered to be in the Ghostbusters,
I would take that role too. Are y'all doing an all-black Ghostbusters? Holla at you, boy.
Of course.
Alyssa, they're remaking Ferris Bueller. They want you for the girl on the bus.
Okay, all right.
The girl on the bus.
She's already a girl. Let me be the principal. I'm not going to do child porn.
To see you be Rooney?
God.
Oh, man, that would be great.
That would be amazing.
Oh.
All right, your stats, Quinn.
Well, I got them pulled up, but just within that, I agree in the sense, but it also feels like when they do stuff like that, like I didn't have a problem, obviously, with the remake of Ghostbusters in concept, but it felt like it was so many people just being like, and here's what all the internet trolls are saying about it. And I'm like, why are we, there are a million stupid people on the internet. Why are we ready to go? Like, it feels weird to get, it's the same thing with Star Wars.
They knew that was going to happen.
It's just like, stop telling me what idiots
It's like they knew that was going to happen, and they're like, look at all, like they want it. It's almost like sometimes people will do a TikTok just because they know they're going to get a lot of hate comments.
Yeah.
And people purposely misspell or like misdo things in TikToks to get comments, to get more
for people to be like,
engagement.
this is not true. What are you doing? Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel like my recommendation is always, as someone who has no followers and has received no online harassment, but like it's always like, do not give voice to the haters and make it a thing, because then it's exactly what they want. Like I just feel like anyway, but
also they'll be like, oh man, all these, and you know what? Sometimes I'll fall victim to this where it's like, oh man, all these people are saying this about this, and it's like you literally saw 2 comments or you saw like 3 tweets.
That's so true.
And it's like, no.
And it's just like, who, and I mean this affectionately for a movie that's quite good, who gives a fuck about Ghostbusters? Like this thing, like I think that's specifically whatever generation. I'm not trying to get into like generational wars, but the idea that like nostalgia, like Star Wars or Ghostbusters or whatever, that was so
or
iconic,
Golden or James Bond.
Yeah.
James Bond actually at least was like they just kept making them. It'd be one thing if James Bond was a thing in the 60s and then they kept trying to remake it. Like it's like, let shit die. Like you're saying, like come up with a new thing and it can be very, like Star Wars isn't totally new. It's just taken from old like Flash Gordon serials. Just do something else. Yeah. And then we don't have to pretend to care about what some 65-year-old dude in Missouri thinks about the new Star Wars. It's like, who cares? Yeah. Okay. Ferris Bueller was made for $5 million in 1986.
Wow.
It made $70 million at the U.S. box office.
Wait,
wow! So it's kind of the same numbers because Ghostbusters, it says the budget was 25 to 30 million, and it made 295 million. So 10 times.
What's the multiplier is
almost
close.
Wow.
Yeah,
close. Yeah.
Ferris Bueller has a 7.8 on IMDb, Leonard. So that's neck and neck with it's the same as the IMDb score for Ghostbusters.
Not as high on Rotten Tomatoes, though.
But on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a
81%. Because people don't like snide ass, snarky ass.
Yeah, but Ghostbusters at 97%, I think we can all agree is too high.
It's insane.
That's not a
too
97% movie.
That's too high. It is not a 97% movie. That's this nostalgia.
That's nostalgia.
That feels like people writing reviews in 2000 about Ghostbusters. I guarantee you it was not 97% critically reviewed when it came out, right? Like,
no.
I would love to know.
way.
I would love to know the reviews when it first came out.
I'm sure
probably because back then there was like, I mean, there's probably payola, so who knows?
Okay. So stats, box office, shit, Leonard. We find ourselves. I mean, is there anything else we want to say before we get to our final arguments?
No.
There's one thing I'd like to say before we started recording today.
Oh wait, I did want to say this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think the only reason why Quinn chose this movie because at one point Ferris Bueller goes, Ferris Bueller.
I do love James Bond. I love me some
He
JB.
loves James Bond. Ferris Bueller is a young James Bond.
When you saw this movie, how old were you when you first saw this movie, Alyssa?
When I first saw Ferris Bueller,
Ferris Bueller.
I was probably like 15.
I'm curious from like the female perspective if you thought, because I think at no other time really was he, but like if you thought Matthew Broderick was cute or like no, he was just more like charismatic in that. Because I was like, is Matthew Broderick like the male Molly Ringwald? Like he's not like that handsome, but he's confident, or he's like like is John Hughes doing the same thing for him as he did for Molly Ringwald?
I was more into Cam. I thought Cam was like hot.
That's an odd. I feel like he's at least better looking than Cam, right?
Not to me.
No, I guess not. Why am I arguing you about this? You're allowed
yeah, because Cam was tall.
I feel like Matthew Broderick was pretty hot, but Cam is tall.
He was tall.
But that haircut was not that good.
I also didn't like the average. Like, I was never attracted to the average. Like what girls would be like, ooh, I'm attracted to Brad Pitt. Or, like, you know what I mean? I never really liked.
You don't find Brad Pitt fine?
Well, sure, but I was not like,
okay.
ooh. Like, okay, here's a good example. Like, within, like, boy bands, most girls were like, ooh, Brian Littrell. Do you know what I mean?
Don't know who that is.
Or like
From
the Backstreet
Boys?
Boys. Like he was always the one that everybody thought was hot.
I thought it was Nick Carter.
I was about to say it wasn't Nick.
Was it?
That's who she liked.
Why are we too?
I thought you were gonna say AJ.
Howie.
He's like, I like
AJ.
Howie.
Was Howie the one with the goatee?
With the curly hair.
Howie had
He's with the curly hair and Backstreet Boys.
I felt like I never was liking what everybody else liked. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
so what you're saying is don't listen to me.
Don't listen to me. But no, sure, he was cute. Sure.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Okay. You could listen to Quinn. Quinn's gonna go first,
like,
and give his final
but
argument.
But I would say girls my age, like there were not a bunch of us girls being like, "Ooh, Matthew Broderick."
Right.
You know
I just
what I mean?
feel like
I was more drawn to. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. He's like so confident. How do I be that way? That was like, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, I would watch it and be like, I better try to figure out how to be more confident like that. But I wasn't like, ooh, I want to date him.
Fair enough. Thank you for answering honestly.
Now, Sloane, I did want to date her.
When she's talking to Cam, or she's like, when I was changing by the pool earlier and you were in your catatonic state, did you notice that? And he just gives that like sheepish smile.
Yes. He's like, yeah. Anyways.
Ferris Bueller, you're my hero. Okay, well, let's move into final arguments. I will go first because Leonard is afraid that he's going to lose. He knows that he has picked the inferior.
I went first last time.
Mm-hmm. And you and I let you because I knew I was going to lose, but you're worried, and so you're like, Quinn, you go first, which is it's interesting. Alyssa, so the topic, and obviously you're going to choose based on your heart. You're going to choose based on what you feel. So I'm just going to make my case for why I think it's the best, and I hope you agree. But we're picking best 80s movie, which can kind of mean a lot of things. It can mean the best movie that was made in the 1980s, which I'm not making this argument, but like we could have said the movie Gandhi or something like that. But that's not a movie that like recalls the 80s, which is how I interpreted this prompt. Like, what's the best 80s movie? When you see it, you think 80s. You actually to tell when we started this, we were unclear exactly which movies were being picked, and you thought that perhaps we had given you the two films Back to the Future and Jurassic Park, which I think came out in the mid 90s.
I was like,
and you did rewatch that for this podcast. And at no point did you think this isn't an 80s movie, which
it's been a rough week for me, gentlemen.
It's been a very rough week. I'm sorry to put you on blast like that.
You rewatched The Rock.
And between those two,
Leonard, you have no place to stay. You watch.
Between those two
Mamma
movies,
Mia.
I would have chosen Back to the Future.
Because it's the only one of those two movies made in the 80s, which is sound reasoning. If you'd chosen Jurassic Park, I would have need to know why.
That is so funny.
But let me use that, I guess, as an example. Is like, quiz. I agree. In fact, Back to the Future might be a better pick than both of these movies. We've already covered it on a different podcast, so it doesn't really matter. But
no, we did Back to the Future too.
Fuck. Okay.
So that's
I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying that would be one where I'd be like, ooh, Back to the Future. That's hard to pick. Because I think from the DeLorean to Marty McFly's vest, I think the only argument against Back to the Future is that he spends a lot of time in the 1950s. But like his style, there's so much emphasis on his sneakers, his style, his fashion,
skateboarding,
the DeLorean, skateboarding, like a lot of 80s kind of tropes that I feel like when I think of 80s movies, that's one of the first places. Even the font of that movie, just kind of whatever. And I think similarly, as compares to Ghostbusters, first of all, I just think Ferris Bueller is a better movie than Ghostbusters. That's just
it's a long-winded argument, Quinn. That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay. Watch me get to it, though. As it gets to 80s movies, Matthew Broderick in this movie is wearing a cheetah print vest the entire movie. You put that movie 10 years later, 10 years earlier, that looks insane. Even looking back at it now, you might be like, I don't know. But in the 80s, Jennifer Grey is wearing those bunchy socks that you used to wear, like 80s jazzercise kind of socks when she's like huddled up calling the police. Ferris's mom with the spiky hair. We've got like the kind of very 80s, or actually, is it a vintage car that his dad wore? But I just associate that car with the 80s. We've got like the Star Wars reference where they're driving the car over the. This is the most. It's John Hughes doing a comedy about teens skipping high school in the 80s. It is the most 80s era movie that you can find, and it's a funny movie. It's better than Ghostbusters. It's funnier. And Leonard's probably going to say, well, Bill Murray, he's the king of the 80s. Bill Murray made classic movies in the 90s, 2000s, and today. Matthew Broderick went on to make movies in the 90s. Matthew Broderick is known as Ferris Bueller. Cam is like everything about this movie is placed in the 80s. And they've remade Ghostbusters, which means Ghostbusters has existed in the 2010s, in the 2020s. Ferris Bueller, Hollywood remakes everything. They have not remade Ferris Bueller because Ferris Bueller 1 still works, but it is also like the perfect encapsulation of the 80s, that it is simultaneously of its time, but like timeless. You can't redo it and do it better. And it's the best 80s movie that we could have picked. It's definitely better than Ghostbusters. Leonard, you go.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, we can talk about wardrobe. We can talk about Rick Moranis and his tracksuit. We can talk about all the outfits Sigourney Weaver's wearing. We see a lot of 80s style, a lot of 80s big hair from the secretary, from Sigourney Weaver. We see these things.
Secretary had short
hair.
We see these things.
Secretary had a short
big
hair.
glasses. Her glasses are big. We see the shoulder pads. We see these things. What we don't see is what's not happening. We know Vinkman is coked up out on these dance floors, dancing his ass off in between busting ghosts. We know the black man is finding it hard to get a taxi up to Manhattan. Okay, we know these things.
We do.
It's Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Rick Moranis. It's so 80s. It's tough because it's like about busting ghosts. Like Ferris Bueller Day Off is a very tough movie to go against because it is literally just a day in the life of some teenagers going all around the city. So you get to see all these different wardrobes, you get to see all these different styles, and you get to see, just basically a day in the life of someone living in the 80s. There's no other story.
Agreed.
It's just someone living a day in the life in the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We know what it's like to live in the 80s. But do we know what it's like to be harassed by one of the greatest comedians of all time in the 1980s? Okay? Do we know what it's like to have to worry about ghosts and also be able to listen to Ray Parker Jr.? I will say this. The soundtrack for this movie is so much better as far as 80s music goes than Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There actually really isn't that much music, and it's more composition than like 80s music. How are you going to have this day in the life of these kids in the 80s walking around? And I don't know, there's not even any titular or like all-encompassing 80s songs that are happening during. That's not. It's literally just like that 30 seconds.
Weird.
What about that scene where he's running home? There's tons of fucking music in Ferris Bueller. I am in.
No, not 80s music. Not 80s music.
It's in the 80s. It's 80s music.
That could be any time. That could
all I'm
be
saying is
60s.
This movie works. This movie works in any day. And this Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he can have a day off in the 90s. He can have a day off in the 2000s. He can have a day off in the 2010s, okay?
When the Ghostbusters movie came out?
There is no way that these Ghostbusters would have been able to get away with this as a private practice in any other time besides the 80s or below. Everything is too regulated. They would have never allowed to be no damn Ghostbusters in the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010. All I'm saying is this is a very tough choice. This is a very tough choice. I don't envy you, Alyssa. But once again,
well,
Leonard said he wanted to pick Mannequin or even Ghostbusters 2.
Well,
he's thought of better ideas
listen.
in this podcast. All right, Alyssa, the floor is yours.
Well, okay. I obviously I'm a connoisseur of the 80s. I know my 80s culture. I know my 80s music, movies. And while both of these movies offer up wonderful storylines where some men are fighting the paranormal and another man, you might say, is fighting the normal. He's fighting against going to school. Now, so for me to have to decide between these two movies, and coming into this, obviously I was going to say Back to the Future. That was where my heart was. And you brought up a good point, Quinn, the wardrobe of Ferris Bueller. I will say, if this was just based on wardrobe, if I wanted to choose, I would obviously have to choose Ferris Bueller because in Ghostbusters, they're just wearing these jumpsuits, which I don't love,
Trench coats.
But unfortunately, this isn't just about wardrobe. This is about the Marshmallow Man. This is about the green goo that covers Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. This is about so much more. This is about Sigourney Weaver being a horny demon. How can I not choose Ghostbusters? How can I not? This movie and the special effects alone. There's something about.
I didn't even talk about the special effects. That's so 80s.
For me, it's the special effects of Ghostbusters that I cannot, because with John Hughes movies, of course, he doesn't really use special effects, but you know what I mean. Like Ferris Bueller, we see Pretty in Pink. Like if you're gonna choose a John Hughes movie, Pretty in Pink for me, yes, I would have voted Pretty in Pink because I do love the wardrobe so much in that I would have just had to go with it. But for me, to fight against going to school, I'm sorry, Quinn. We're fighting ghosts and demons and ghouls. I have to go Ghostbusters. No other time period were they able to have Ray Parker Jr. say, "Bustin' makes me feel good," and that be a movie that 13-year-old boys were singing along to. That is the funniest line I've ever heard in my life, and I have to give it to Ghostbusters. I am so sorry. Quinn,
you don't know how sweet this feels. It feels so good because I was literally saying after this movie, I watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I watched Ghostbusters yesterday. I was like, I have no chance of winning this. Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is gonna,
because it's such a objectively, Alyssa, you're wrong.
How am
but
I
hold
wrong?
on, but hold on,
How?
one second,
How am I
one
wrong?
second, and I was like, all right, if I would have known we were gonna do this prompt like this season and earlier in the season, I would have chosen a different movie. But I chose Ghostbusters because we were gonna have Alyssa on in season 4, like towards the end of the season. It didn't happen. It was very close. And I was like, I have to pick a movie that I think will win with Alyssa.
That's right.
And I chose Ghostbusters. And like this time I was like, I'm going to lose with Ghostbusters maybe. Maybe I should have just chosen something that was more fun. But I was right the original time.
Well, listen,
I chose this movie for the last one because I was like, I think Ghostbusters will win with Alyssa. And
he's
I
right.
was
Because
right.
I'm not the normal, but hear me out. Even before I knew who chose what movie, in my mind, it had to be Ghostbusters. Because also think about this, Quinn. I think about all the young little boys, especially little boys wearing their little Ghostbusters, with their little whatever those machines. That's a phenomenon that Ferris Bueller could not even dream of. The way that that movie sunk into kids, especially kids of the 80s that were watching this, and the way that, do you know what I mean? Of course, Ferris Bueller is a great 80s movie. Boom, jump, chicka chicka, Bueller, all that stuff. Yes, but there was something way more the way that Ghostbusters sunk into the to our pores. It got into our DNA. You
Quinn
don't
hasn't said
why
a
is
single
it
word. Quinn hasn't said a word.
I'm gonna have to talk to you after this. I feel like you're sad.
This
I'm
one's
not
been
sad.
running.
I'm
He's
I'm
shocked.
Is he angry?
He's shocked. He's shocked.
I cannot
See,
believe
you
this.
picked
I
the wrong
genuinely
John
cannot.
Hughes.
I cannot wrap my head around this.
For me,
Alyssa,
you picked the wrong John Hughes movie. If you would have said 16 Candles, even
so
though
close.
16 Candles and
you
Pretty
got
in
it.
Pink
You
are-
should have pandered towards your audience.
even though they're problematic movies, I would have had to choose those no matter
I
what.
also just think I'm like confident that history will vindicate me. Like I feel like no one listening to this podcast thinks that Ghostbusters
I
is
don't
better.
know.
Not even fucking Leonard.
What are you
thinks it's a
talking
better movie.
about? History.
Well,
Actually now
well-
I'm interested in polling this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to.
interested.
I want to poll it.
We will poll it.
I'm interested.
someone on the-
I want to know what Christopher Edens thinks. When
I
he listens
feel
to
like
this
I
episode.
cannot pick a movie that it feels like such a slam dunk, and then Leonard will just pick one, and it will always go Leonard. And I feel like there is no more slam dunk than best
What?
80s movie.
I
They
don't-
fucking make Ghostbusters movie this last year.
But that
Nobody
doesn't,
cares.
but that doesn't
like,
matter. We're talking about the original 1984, Quinn. Do you understand what was going on in that year?
Quinn,
No.
we have won.
19.
The episode is run long. Alyssa, you have been
Oh,
amazing.
you gotta go, Leonard.
Oh, we gotta go.
Alyssa, where can the people find
You
you?
guys find me on Twitter and Instagram at Alyssa_Sabo. I'm also on TikTok, just at Alyssa Sabo there.
And that's 2 S's with the Alyssa.
2 S's.
S-A-B-O.
Yes, S-A-B-O. And a Y. A-L-Y-S-S-A. I should have just spelled it out. Quinn, we need to talk about this after because I'm looking.
Check out Alyssa on the.
Oh yeah, she's got a
You can
podcast,
find
Totally
Alyssa
Rad.
on her podcast, Totally Rad, where she is a 16-year-old in 1996.
Which is not really how old I was in 1996. I'll never reveal my age. Yes, Quinn and Leonard, we're both on incredible episodes. People are still talking about your guys' episodes.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you guys on as a duo.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah. Talk
not
about
going anywhere
we'll talk
without
about a
it, you
movie. We'll talk about Back to the Future.
I'm not talking about shit.
Listeners, if you're keeping track, I have won the last 3 championships, and I have now started season 5 2-0.
Oh.
Let's go.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you guys. Bye.
That was an
you.
insincere thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess Quinn won't be seeing.
I'll see you guys
Alyssa.
fucking nowhere.
Oh, I'll see you at the garage show. Come to the garage show.
Yeah.
All right.
Come to Quinn's garage show and tell him he was right.
Yeah, please, someone fluff my ego. All right, this has been a depressing episode of the people. We tell people like, hey, we're gonna do this thing, and we take it pretty serious. And then
That's
people are
so
like,
funny.
oh, haha, it's a comedy podcast. Like, no, I might get angry.
You get angry. I'm like very well now. I do feel I'm like I honestly I did not do it based on like Leonard's argument or quit. Like I had my mind made up.
I know you didn't do it based on Leonard's
and
argument.
there was
Yeah,
no.
my
We
argument
all
was
know.
trash.
My mind.
My argument was I didn't even plan an argument. My whole argument
we see
was
it.
to be
We see
negative
it.
about Ferris Bueller
I
go
feel
throughout
like
the
Leonard
episode.
just
That
reversed
was
my father's expensive car out the back of the garage, and now I got to take the heat for it when my dad comes home.
I would say, yeah, Ferris Bueller, like mentally speaking, is like way more 80s. Like,
Enough.
but I'm not.
The
I'm
verdict
not
has
like
been rendered.
I'm not like a mental person. I'm more like, what's going on? Oh, look at
Is it
that.
because I
Look at
said
all
you'd be the
that.
girl on the bus, Alyssa? Because I think you're more.
You know what? That was a part of it. No, honestly, it would be my honor to be her.
See, I knew Alyssa needed something exciting, something to get
I'm kind of
entranced.
yeah.
She needed to be taken somewhere else for 2 hours.
And because I do
Ghostbusters
love
does that for
ghosts, and I believe in ghosts, and I think it's funny that they can capture them in a machine. Sorry. Ferris Bueller, like I said, Ferris Bueller fighting the normal, Ghostbusters fighting the paranormal.
Leonard, cut the audio.
Mike chops. I'm stopping
All right,
the
guys.
recording.
The episode is ending. We'll see you at the cinema.
Fuck the cinema.
There it is.